The DCEU was doomed to fail since 2013. Let me explain what I mean, but we're actually going to work backwards in this podcast episode. Let's get right into it. The Flash, the latest DCEU movie entry starring Michael Keaton, had a whole new multiverse timeline that was going to be really, really interesting that I actually quite like, is bombing ridiculously hard. I thought Shazam was bad. I mean, it's already made more money than Shazam, but considering, the status of this movie, it should have made so much more money, and it's still an absolute disappointment. It recorded a 73% drop in its second weekend. That is almost an all-time record. There's only, I think, the one movie that's worse than that is Steel. I think it's even worse than Morbius now, actually. I'm not sure, but it's in the top 3 worst second weekend drops for sure. And so people have just ditched. It's obvious people are not paying their hard-earned money to go see DCEU films. Why is this? What's happened? And has the writing been on the wall this whole time? We're going to work backwards through some of the history today. So first, let's talk about one thing that people are throwing around a lot, and that is, it's because there's a reboot. We know that James Gunn is rebooting everything, so nothing in these movies is really going to matter. And that's a decent argument, except for the fact that these movies have been doing poorly for a long time now. It's not like they announced James Gunn's rebooted DCU, and then all of a sudden the movies started being bad. It's like, no, they were bad before that. They had bad box office before that. So let's talk about that a little bit. And so Shazam and Black Adam. Okay, we had the Flash. Flash is a ridiculous bomb. Shazam was a horrible bomb. But the funny thing was is that people say Shazam was a good movie, and it still was an absolute disaster. And so, people are thinking that, that this has happened for a while, but Shazam was a disaster, and then Black Adam was also a disaster. But Shazam was a pretty decent movie. So according to a lot of people, I didn't even bother to go see it, as a lot of people didn't, because there was just no connectivity. And I think part of this all goes back to, we have been so accustomed to have this connected, overarching narrative that we see from Marvel. But there doesn't seem to be any of that. If anything, Black Adam and Shazam 2 should have been connected together so that we have good movies setting up even better movies. That's ideally how this whole connected universe should work. I mean, if you're going to be a writer, you don't want a single bad entry in your series. If you have like a 10 movie series or a 10 book series, you don't want to have a single bad entry. You want every single entry to be ridiculously good and ridiculously hype, but also leave things open and set things up for the future without sacrificing that individual movie. Problem is, DCEU didn't even do that. They didn't even do the setup poorly. There was just no connection made, period. It was so vague. Apparently, there was only a loose connection between Shazam and Black Adam. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson apparently didn't want Shazam in his movie or to be in the other movie, which is very weird because he's playing a B-level character in a B-level character's comic, and it's just like, really? Those movies should have been connected and building off of each other, giving each other momentum. That would have made a lot more sense, but that's not what they did. And so, back in Black Adam, I had no interest in going to see that movie because I didn't feel like it was connected to anything else. I didn't feel like I was going to get a continuation of the Justice League story. And quite frankly, there hadn't been that very many really critically acclaimed DCEU movies, so I wasn't running out to go see it. I was going to wait and see what the reviews were, and the reviews were meh, and so I didn't bother to see it. And so everything just felt disconnected. There was no, I got to get the next chapter of this story. It was all like, after the Justice League, everything was just sort of fractured and out in its own little corner. And then, like, why would I want to go see this chapter that might not go anywhere? I have no idea where this is going. There's no Justice League 2 on the horizon. There's no big event to look forward to. Everything is in disarray. Like, there was no hype around this. And the first Shazam was great, but Superman should have been in it. And that's just a sign that there's all of this drama behind the scenes. If we go back to the first Shazam, why they couldn't get Henry Cavill in it because they hadn't decided if they wanted to keep him or not. Apparently, they never even made that decision until the last minute as a marketing ploy to try to get more people into, the theaters for Black Adam. But at that point, the ill will between fans and the studio was just so bad, nobody went to see Black Adam, or at least not enough people to make it a profitable movie. And then, of course, Wonder Woman 1984, bad reviews. A lot of people had an issue with it. Some people liked it. And then, Harley Quinn and Birds of Prey, people just hated that movie. That movie was also a bomb. And so really, the only movie that was really successful was The Batman, and that's an Elseworlds movie. That movie had nothing to do with the DCEU, and I think that's why a lot of people went to go see it, because it was something new. There was at least hope that, hey, maybe this thing will work and maybe we'll get good sequels to this and we can get a good story. And also it's Batman, right? But even then, I don't think Batman is immune to this whole chaos that is DCEU, because there were maybe even three versions of the Batman, no spoilers, but there were many versions of the Batman in The Flash. Michael Keaton came back as Batman in The Flash, and nobody cared. Nobody cared. So even Batman isn't a slam dunk for them. So let's wind it back all the way to, Justice League. The whole Zack Snyder thing was a massive issue. They trashed his vision. They gave us the Snyder Cut, but ultimately they're not going to restore the Snyderverse. No way that that's happening. Now that James Gunn is the one taking over. And so we're going to talk about the Zack Snyder thing later, but right down to the Justice League, they couldn't pick a path and stick to it. They had to change the tone of the movie halfway through, and as a result, the movie suffered, and that movie also didn't make any money. So their first big Avengers-level event didn't work financially, and then they didn't want to make another one, and that's part of why there's no connectivity for all of these movies like Shazam, Harley Quinn, Black Adam, The Suicide Squad, which also didn't do well, and The Flash, because nobody knows what this is leading to. And now that, we know that James Gunn is rebooting everything, apparently it's not leading to anything, so why bother go see it, right? At least there should have been an overarching story that all of these movies after Justice League were pointing to. There should have been at least some sort of connection. At least with Zack Snyder's Justice League, there was Darkseid. You had a big bad out there, just like with the Avengers. We knew Thanos was coming. It took like 7 years, 8 years for him to get here. Or 6 years, doesn't matter. It took him a long time to get here, but we knew he was coming. And each movie kind of paid homage to that. The movies were their own thing, they were great, but they still were part of that overarching story, and we knew Thanos was coming. There was nothing like that since 2017. And so we've gone 6 years without that very key element of a bigger story for the DCEU. So no wonder people have just fallen off these movies, because they're all different movies. They don't feel like they're connected. They're technically connected, but the movies are not structured in such a way so that the audience really feels that and builds up anticipation for the next chapter the way Marvel did. So by the time we get to, and Harley Quinn and Birds of Prey, that movie had its own problems. It wasn't very good. They got political with it. Wonder Woman 1984, again, people just didn't like it. But so by the time we get through all of those movies, and then we have an Elseworlds movie and the Batman, the best one that they put out in the wild doesn't even matter to the overall story. And then Joker doesn't even matter. That's one of the best ones they ever put out. By the time you get to Black Adam and Shazam, they just feel pointless. It's like, why would I bother going to see these movies unless I know that this story is going to take me somewhere? And so there's no consistent, the quality has been consistently bad, unfortunately, in terms of getting people invested in the story. Apparently Shazam 2, pretty decent movie. I didn't see it. Apparently Black Adam was likable. I didn't see it. I saw The Flash. I thought The Flash was pretty great. I don't know why people hate it so much. I mean, I get the whole CGI thing, but I thought it was great. But I think this issue that with the Justice League goes back to even before Batman and v Superman. We're going to get to that in a minute. But the main issue with Justice League is that they had to introduce, new characters. in that movie that should have already been set up, because in a big team up movie, you should have had a team building arc. And so with the Avengers, each of the main characters already had a movie and already had an established arc that the Avengers movie could build onto. They didn't have to spend any time establishing these characters individually, but they spent time establishing their dynamic as a team. Whereas even in Zack Snyder's Justice League, I watched it, I thought it was a good movie, but there's a lot of that movie that was setting up the Flash and setting up Cyborg because we've never seen them before. And I think that's fundamentally a massive issue. Was the fundamental mistake, was trying to do these big movies, Avengers level movies, and introduce and give brand new characters, brand new arcs, and a team established, and establish a team dynamic as well. The Avengers movie was great. It had enough on its plate establishing their dynamic as a team, never mind introducing brand new characters, which it didn't have to do because we'd seen a couple them all at least once before already, twice in the case of Iron Man. And so they failed to establish these individual arcs, so there's really very little foundation for the team dynamic to be into. And so I actually think Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Snyderverse version of Justice League, actually suffers a little bit, being really big and overly long, because I thought it was a good story, but it's still lags, and you have to get through all of the Cyborg stuff. And again, stuff with Cyborg was great, and it's a shame what Warner Brothers did to Zack Snyder's vision. They absolutely botched it. I 100% agree with everybody on that, but I think it's a fundamental mistake to introduce new characters in a movie that's supposed to be building a team. I think you can do it, but given the superhero genre and the fact that you have to have so many action scenes, and it was also introducing Starkseid and Steppenwolf, that movie was a lot. And when you trim it down to theatrical size, there's no way that all of those story arcs would have been done justice in a 2-hour cut, or even a 2.5-hour cut, as opposed to the 4-hour cut we got on HBO Max, now just called Max, which is kind of stupid. But this probably can go all the way back to Batman v Superman, because they established Batman and Wonder Woman in Batman v Superman. So again, we're taking time to establish Wonder Woman and taking time to establish Batman before we even get to, the big team up versus whatever the guy's name is. I actually didn't watch that movie. I should probably go back and do that. But again, a lot of people didn't like that movie, and I think that's probably one of those reasons why. And so, I think that's how we got here. It took them 3 years to make a new movie after Man of Steel. There should have been a new Batman movie in 2014. There should have been a Wonder Woman movie in 2015, and then Batman v Superman should have teamed them all up in an Avengers style film. I think that would have been a much smarter way to go, and then immediately have a Flash sequel, a Cyborg sequel, maybe another Batman or Superman sequel, and then we move into Justice League. I think that would have been a much smarter way to go. But I feel like they were always reactionary, because when Man of Steel came out, I think it only made 600 and something at the box office. And of course, I think they were reactionary in the fact that they was like, oh, it wasn't $1 billion film. Let's shoehorn Batman and Wonder Woman into the next one really fast so that, we can make more money with the next one. That didn't work, unfortunately, and everything was downhill from there. So I actually think the DCEU was doomed to fail from the start, based on that one fundamental decision that they didn't take the time to establish each individual character in their own movie the way Marvel did. And I think that's why Marvel works. I think that's why Marvel will continue to work, even though Phase 4 and Phase 5 have been really meh so far. I think that's how I think they still have a fighting chance to get out of it and turn things around. The DCEU is basically crash and burned at this point. You got to start the whole thing over. So we're going to see what James Gunn does. I'm looking forward to what they have. But let's talk about the future, the last 2 movies of the DCEU for a minute. I think Blue Beetle and Aquaman are just going to bomb terribly. Whatever led to this whole thing that led to Black Adam and The Flash and Shazam bombing and not making money, it's not gone away yet. It's going to make Blue Beetle bomb, and it's going to make Aquaman bomb. I don't think any of those characters are going to make it into the DCU. I know they've said that they're planning for Blue Beetle to be a trilogy. No, I don't believe that for a second. They're saying they have an intention. They're saying they have plans to make it. But if the movie bombs, and it will bomb, they have an out. It's like, oh, well, we had planned to make Blue Beetle a trilogy and make it part of the DCU, but it bombed so badly, we're going to scrap those plans. I guarantee you they have no, I'm positive they have no intention of actually making Blue Beetle part of the DCU right away. Maybe they do, and that's cool, but it'll probably be a different version of the character because that movie's going to bomb. It's going to bomb really bad. And so I think the DCEU is going to start off really slow. We're going to start off with Superman Legacy, and that movie is not going to make a ton of money. I don't think it will because all of the sour tastes of all of these box office bombs that we're getting this year is still going to be in people's memory. And then I think there's nothing for 2024, right? I'll double check that, but the last two are coming out this year, and then we have to wait 2 years. And so the last thing the general public is going to remember is these movies bombing or being so-so or okay. And so I think it's going to, if the movies are good, it will be successful. Superman Legacy will start us off. Hopefully a clear 600 million, 700 million would be really, really nice. Even 500, even half a billion would be great at this point with what we're doing with what all of these DCEU movies are right now. I think Superman Legacy would be happy with half a billion. If it's good. If it's good, it can get new life on streaming. A lot of people that skipped it in theaters will watch it at home, be like, hey, I really like this. This is great. Maybe I'll go and see the next one that they put out. Looks like they're turning this thing around. And then more people might go see the next one. And if that's good, people will go see the next one. And eventually, over time, if they don't make the same mistake again and establish each character in their own films, really good films, I think that the DCU can flourish and thrive if the individual movies are good enough to create hype and a desire for more. If they're just meh, they're screwed. They're screwed. We've had so much DC meh as it is, and they're bombing. If they come out of the gate and the first 1, 2, 3 movies are meh, they're screwed. They're done. It'll be really hard to fix it at that point. But that's my thoughts on the state of DCEU. Make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you guys next time with a brand new podcast, and I hope to see you there. Bye.